I should have known. The moment my children stopped calling me Dad and started asking about the papers, I should have seen it coming. But I didn't. I trusted them. I loved them. And that love, that blind, foolish love of a father, it crippled me. Last week, I overheard a conversation in my own kitchen, one that carved a hole right through me. They weren't talking about me as their father, no. They were talking about me as an obstacle, a signature standing between them and the inheritance they believed they deserved. That was the night I decided I wouldn't let them win. You have to understand, I built that house. The mansion, they called it, with that greedy little gleam in their eyes. It wasn't just a house, it was my mind made manifest. My final, greatest creation. A smart home system so advanced, so intuitive, it was practically alive. It knew my moods, my preferences, the rhythm of my very soul. It was my sanctuary, my pride and joy. And they saw it as a bank vault. A shiny, billion-dollar vault waiting to be cracked open the moment I was in the ground. I was sitting in my study. The door opened just a crack, nursing a single malt scotch that suddenly tasted like ash. The voices floated down the hall, my son, Marcus, and my daughter, Celia. They thought I was upstairs, napping. The old man's afternoon ritual. How convenient for them. The trust is airtight, see, Marcus said, his voice that slick, boardroom tone he uses to intimidate junior executives. But the house is the real asset. The land alone is worth, I know what it's worth, Celia cut in, her voice sharp, impatient. But he could live another 20 years. He's stubborn as a mule. We need to encourage him to finalize things, to make a decision. There was a chilling pause. I felt my heart, a tired old drum, hammering against my ribs. Encourage him. The words hung in the air, toxic and heavy. Then Marcus, quieter now, conspiratorial, Doctor Evans said his heart is weaker than he lets on. Another episode and well, we need to be prepared. We can't have him getting sentimental and leaving it to some charity for orphaned robots. They both laughed. A dry, horrible sound. I felt the glass tremble in my hand. Dr. Evans. My own doctor. They'd gone behind my back, consulted my physician about my mortality like it was a stock portfolio performance review. Celia's voice dropped to a venomous whisper. And let's be absolutely clear, Marcus. Under no circumstances does that house go to Arthur. That technological troglodyte would probably try to heat it with firewood. He'd ruin the value. It has to be one of us. It has to be me. I'm the only one who appreciates what it is. Arthur, my brother's boy, my nephew, a sweet, simple man who fixes antique clocks and thinks a smartphone is unnecessarily complicated. They'd always mocked him, called him a simpleton, a luddite. But he had a good heart, a heart they had surgically removed from their own bodies years ago in exchange for ambition and greed. In that moment, listening to my children calmly discuss my death and the division of my life's work, something in me broke. Not my heart that was already shattered. No, something else broke. The last vestige of my hope for them. The fatherly love curdled into something cold and hard and precise. I set my glass down. The ice cubes clinked, a tiny sound of finality. They didn't hear it. They were too busy measuring my curtains for their new homes. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat right here, in this very chair, and I stared out at the city lights glittering like cold diamonds. And I planned. Oh, I planned. It wasn't enough to just cut them out. That would be a mere slap on the wrist. They'd contest the will, tie it up in courts for years, and eventually, their sheer venomous persistence would win out. No, they needed a lesson, a real, tangible, devastating lesson in irony. They needed to understand the true value of what they coveted, and they needed to understand that it was forever beyond their reach. They wanted the mansion, fine, but they would have to earn it. The next morning, I called a meeting, a family meeting. You should have seen their faces when they arrived, trying to mask their avarice with concern. Marcus in his $1,000 suit, Celia in her designer dress, both looking like they'd just come from a funeral they were excited to profit from. They sat on the edge of the white Italian sofa in the living room, the morning sun glinting off the flawless chrome and glass of my home. "Dad," Marcus began, using fake sincerity, "you're looking well. We've been worried. We just want to make sure everything is in order. For your peace of mind." "Yes, Dad," Celia chimed in, her voice syrupy sweet. "It must be such a burden, all this." She gestured vaguely at the room, at the invisible, omnipresent eye that hung through the walls. "We just want to help you manage it all." I looked at them, these beautiful, hollow strangers I had raised. I felt a pang of loss so profound it took my breath away. But I steeled myself. "I've made my decision," I said, my voice steady, stronger than I felt. "Regarding the house." You could almost hear their pupils dilating, see the calculations flashing behind their eyes. They leaned forward, a perfectly synchronized display of greed. "I've decided," I continued, "that the person who inherits this house cannot be someone who sees it merely as an asset. It must be someone who will appreciate its challenges, someone who will truly live with it." Marcus' mask slipped for a second, confusion flickering across his face. "Challenges? Dad, it's a smart home paradise. It runs itself." "Does it?" I asked, a faint smile touching my lips. "Or do I run it?" "There's a difference. A crucial one." Celia's eyes narrowed. She was smarter, more perceptive. She smelled a trap. "What are you saying, Father?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment. The first turn of the screw. I am leaving this house, and everything in it, to the family member I deem most technologically inexperienced. The one who has shown the least interest in modern convenience. The one who values simplicity over complexity. The silence was absolute. The house's climate control chose that moment to whisper to life, a soft sigh of air that made them both jump. Marcus was the first to break. He laughed. A short, sharp, incredulous bark. "You're joking, right? This is one of your jokes. Technologically inexperienced. Who does that leave?" "Aunt Mildred. She's 97 and thinks Wi-Fi gives you gout." "It's not Aunt Mildred," I said calmly. Celia stood up, her composure cracking. "This is ridiculous. This is a $1 billion integrated system. You can't leave it to some Amish relative who's going to rip out the servers to plant potatoes. The terms are non-negotiable," I said, my voice dropping to a low, firm register that brooked no argument. It was my CEO voice, the one they remembered from childhood that meant business. "My lawyer has the documents. The will is being amended as we speak." Marcus stood now too, his face flushing a dangerous red. "Who?" he demanded, his voice shaking with a rage he could barely contain. "Who is it, Dad? Who's the lucky beneficiary of your sudden senility?" I looked from my son's enraged face to my daughter's betrayed one. I let the silence stretch, let their imaginations run wild, let the suspense coil in the room like a snake. Then I said it. "Arthur." The name hung in the air, and for a second, it didn't compute. "Arthur. Our Arthur. Poor, clueless Arthur." The reaction was instantaneous and volcanic. "Arthur!" Marcus roared, his fist clenching at his side. "That imbecile. He can't even work the self-checkout at the grocery store. Hell destroy it. Hell destroy everything you built." Celia wasn't yelling. She was deathly quiet, her eyes like chips of ice. "You're doing this to punish us," she whispered. "For what?" "For being successful. For understanding the world you live in. This is betrayal, Father." I met her gaze, and in that moment, any last shred of doubt vanished. "No, Celia," I said softly. "Betrayal is what I heard in my kitchen yesterday. This is justice." The words landed like a physical blow. She recoiled, her hand flying to her throat. She knew. She knew I'd heard them. The color drained from her face, replaced by a mask of pure, undiluted hatred. Marcus was still sputtering, too enraged to process the subtext. This is not justice. This is insanity. I won't allow it. I'll fight this. I'll take it to every court in the country. You can't do this. I can, I said, standing up, feeling a strange, cold power coursing through me. And I have. The will includes a contestation clause. Anyone who challenges it automatically forfeits any other bequest: the stocks, the bonds, the liquid assets. You'll be left with nothing. Try me. I turned my back on them, a deliberate, final dismissal. I walked to the window and looked out at my kingdom. I heard Celia's sharp, furious intake of breath, the sound of Marcus nearly choking on his own fury. You've made a terrible mistake, Celia hissed, her voice trembling with a venom I never knew she possessed. No, my dear, I said without turning around. For the first time in a long time, I've made exactly the right decision. I heard their footsteps, sharp and angry on the polished concrete floor, retreating. The front door hissed open and then slammed shut with a force that violated the house's gentle pneumatics. And I was alone. The house, sensing my elevated heart rate, my adrenaline, subtly adjusted the lighting to a more calming, warm amber and played a gentle, ambient soundscape of distant wind chimes. It was trying to soothe its master. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My hands were shaking. The confrontation had taken more out of me than I wanted to admit. But it was done. The die was cast. The weeks that followed were a cold war. The children didn't call. They didn't visit. My phone was silent, save for one terse email from Marcus' lawyer, outlining the ludicrous and vulnerable nature of the amended estate plan. I forwarded it to my lawyer with a one-word instruction. Proceed. I spent my time differently now. I wasn't just living in the house, I was programming it. I was setting the stage. I called it the final protocol. I accessed the core programming, the deeply embedded routines that governed every aspect of the mansion's existence. The I, which it named Chaos Customized Home Automation and Orchestration System, was a marvel of my own design. It learned. It adapted. It was designed to please me, to anticipate my needs, to create an environment of perfect, seamless comfort. But what if its new master was the antithesis of comfort? What if its directives were to serve someone whose very presence was a system error? I wrote new code. Contingencies. If primary user preferences are for Finch, then initiate protocol pandemonium. It was diabolical. It was beautiful. The heating and cooling systems, instead of maintaining a perfect 72 degrees, would be programmed to fluctuate based on Arthur's detected stress levels. The more frustrated he became, the hotter or colder it would get. The lighting would never quite be right. A little too dim for reading, a little too bright for relaxing, always just off enough to be noticeable, to be annoying. The music system would never play a song he liked. It would learn his tastes and then play the exact opposite. If it heard him humming a classic rock tune, it would fill the house with aggressive atonal jazz or polka. The automated blinds would open and close at random intervals, day and night, ensuring he could never quite get a good night's sleep. The voice-activated assistant, which responded to my voice with smooth obedience, would be recalibrated to misunderstand his every request. If he asked for the news, it might play a documentary on paint drying. If he asked for the time, it might recite poetry in Finnish. It was a masterpiece of personalized torture, a prison of perfection that would slowly, methodically, drive a man like Arthur utterly out of his mind. He wouldn't be able to stop it. He wouldn't be able to control it. The control panels were seamless touchscreens with no buttons. The wiring was all hidden behind impenetrable walls. He'd be trapped in a nightmare of modern luxury, a king in a castle designed to revolt against him. And my children, they would have to watch. They would inherit everything else: the money, The stocks, the companies, but they would have to stand by, powerless, and watch the crown jewel, the thing they wanted most, be utterly destroyed by the one person they considered most unworthy. They would see their birthright rendered unlivable. They would see Arthur miserable and defeated, but they would never, ever get their hands on it. The revenge was perfect, poetic, and it filled me with a dark, grim satisfaction. My health, true to their private assessment, was failing. The episodes Dr. Evans had mentioned became more frequent. A tightness in the chest, a dizzy spell. But each time I felt one coming on, I'd think of my plan, and a strange energy would buoy me up. I had to see it through. I invited Arthur over. He came, of course, because he was a kind soul who checked in on his old uncle. He arrived in his battered, 20-year-old sedan, a stark contrast to the silent electric vehicles my children drove. He was wearing a warm flannel shirt and jeans, and he carried a loaf of banana bread his wife had baked. The smell of it, warm and genuine, was a stark contrast to the sterile, filtered air of my home. "Kyle," he said, his smile wide and unguarded. "Good to see you. The place is looking well. It's looking like it always does. Like a spaceship landed in a museum." He laughed, a warm, hearty sound that echoed in the minimalist vastness of the entrance hall. I smiled, a real one this time. "It's good to see you, Arthur. Come in. Let's talk." We sat in the library, a room with real paper books, one of the few places that felt warm. The house, sensing my location and guest, offered us a drink through a soft, chime-like tone. No thank you," Arthur said politely to the empty air, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. "It's okay," I said. "It's just the house. It's helpful." "If you say so," he said, looking around warily. "Seems like a lot of trouble if you ask me. I'd rather just get my own drink." That's my boy, I thought. Perfect. I didn't tell him about the will. Not yet. That would come later, in the official reading. This was a scouting mission. I was studying my instrument of revenge, and I was pleased. He was perfect. He was genuinely bewildered by a voice-activated assistant. He was the key that would lock my children out of their paradise forever. We talked for an hour about his clocks, about his family, about simple, good things. It was a balm on my soul. When he left, promising to come back soon, I felt a pang of guilt. He was a good man. He didn't deserve what was coming. But then I remembered the conversation in the kitchen, the cold, calculating voices of my children, the betrayal. The justice had to be served. Arthur would be uncomfortable, yes, maybe even miserable for a time. But he was resilient. He'd eventually leave, sell the place for a fortune to some tech baron who could handle it, and live out his days in happy, simple comfort. The punishment wasn't for Arthur. It was for Marcus and Celia. He was just the unwitting delivery mechanism for their sentence. The final episode happened a month later. I was in my workshop, fine-tuning the parameters of Protocol Pandemonium, when the pain hit. It was a vice around my chest, a white-hot lightning bolt down my arm. I gasped, stumbling back, my hand knocking a tablet from the bench. It shattered on the floor. The house knew instantly. Alarms, silent to me, but screaming through its network, triggered. Lights flashed a gentle, urgent amber. A calm, synthesized voice filled the room. "Kyle, my sensors indicate a cardiac event. Emergency services have been alerted. Please remain calm. Help is on the way." I slid to the floor, my back against a cabinet, each breath a ragged, painful effort. This was it. The curtain was falling. But my work, was it done? Was the protocol ready? The paramedics arrived with shocking speed, their uniforms and equipment a jarring intrusion into my sleek, designed world. They were efficient, professional, placing an oxygen mask over my face, hooking me up to monitors. As they lifted me onto the gurney, my lawyer, Benjamin, rushed in, his face pale with worrying. had been alerted by the house. Another part of my contingency planning. Kyle, he said, gripping my hand. His hand was warm. Mine was cold. Benjamin, I rasped, the word muffled by the mask. I pulled it aside, fighting for air for time. The protocol is it. It's done, Kyle, he said, his eyes full of a sadness that told me he understood the entirety of my grim plan. It's all in place. The will is locked. Pandemonium is active upon transfer of title. A wave of relief washed over me, stronger than the pain. It was done. They wheeled me out, through the halls of my creation. The house seemed to be watching. The sensors like 1,000 unblinking eyes. The lights dimmed respectfully as I passed. I spent 3 days in the hospital. Marcus and Celia came, of course. The vultures had to circle. Their concern was a pathetically thin veneer over their buzzing excitement. They thought the end was near. They thought their wait was almost over. They had no idea that their inheritance was already ashes in their mouths. I signed the final documents from my hospital bed, Benjamin as my witness. My signature was a shaky scrawl, but it was legal. It was binding. And then, on the third night, as a slow, cold rain pattered against the window, I let go. There was no great light, no profound feeling of peace. There was only the satisfaction of a plan well laid, a game of chess finished with a final, devastating move. Checkmate. The reading of the will was held in the mansion's main living room. I wish I could have been a fly on that wall. Benjamin described it to me later, and if played the scene over and over in my mind, my own private victory lap. My children were there, dressed in appropriate somber black, but they couldn't hide the eager anticipation. Arthur was there too, confused and uncomfortable in a suit he probably hadn't worn in a decade. Benjamin, standing formally, read the dry, legal language about stocks, bonds and portfolios. Marcus and Celia received their vast fortunes, their faces carefully neutral, waiting for the main event. And then Benjamin came to it. And regarding the primary residence, known as the mansion, located at 1 Oracle Drive, and all its contents, systems, and integrated technologies, I, Kyle Finch, hereby bequeath it in its entirety to my nephew, Arthur Finch. The silence was, by all accounts, absolute. Arthur's head snapped up, his mouth agape in pure, uncomprehending shock. Marcus shot to his feet. What? No. There must be a mistake. Read it again. Celia didn't move a muscle, but Benjamin said her face went as white as the walls. She just stared, first at Benjamin, then at Arthur, with a look of such pure, undiluted hatred that it chilled the room. There is no mistake, Marcus, Benjamin said calmly, adjusting his glasses. The will is quite specific. This is absurd. Marcus shouted, his voice echoing in the vast space. He can't have it. He doesn't know a server from a salad server. This is an insult to my father's legacy. It was then that the house chose to speak. A smooth, calm, synthesized voice, my voice, the one it programmed for chaos, filled the room. Title transfer recognized. New primary user, Arthur Finch. Welcome home, Arthur. Initiating user preference learning sequence. A soft, chime-like melody played. The lighting shifted to a warm, golden hue. For a moment, it was the welcoming embrace I had designed for myself. Arthur jumped at the sound of the voice. What was that? Who said that? And then the second part of my plan kicked in. The lighting flickered, just once. The gentle golden hue shifted, ever so slightly, to a sickly, pale green. Marcus froze, his tirade cut short. He looked around. He knew this house. He knew it didn't flicker. It didn't make mistakes. Celia finally spoke, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. What did you do? She said, not to Benjamin, but to Arthur, as if he were responsible. What did you do? Arthur, bewildered, just held his hands up. I didn't do anything. I don't even know what's happening. Benjamin cleared his throat, drawing their attention back to the document in his hands. "There is a codicil," he said. "A final message from Kyle." The room fell silent again, all eyes on him. "It says," Benjamin read, his voice echoing the words he'd written with my last ounce of strength, "A house is not a home when it's a vault. A legacy is not an inheritance when it's a burden. You wanted my masterpiece. Now you can watch it be lived in by a master of a different kind. I hope you enjoy the show." And with those final, vengeful words hanging in the now cold air, the mansion's climate control system, obeying its new protocol, let out a long, loud, and decidedly rude mechanical fart noise. It was the perfect, childish, hilarious punctuation to my epic revenge. The first salvo in a war my children didn't know they were fighting. Arthur jumped a foot in the air. Marcus' face purpled with a rage so complete he was speechless. And Celia finally understood. The veil lifted. She saw the entire brilliant, terrible scope of my plan. She saw that the house was not a prize, but a prison. That Arthur was not the beneficiary, but the guard. And that they were not the heirs, but the audience to their own eternal frustration. The look on her face, Benjamin told me, was not one of anger, but of utter, devastating defeat. She knew they had lost. She knew her father had. You know, when you're dead, you get a lot of time to think, to reflect. And let me tell you, the view from the other side, it's a hell of a thing. I'm not some ghost floating around my mansion, thank God. That would be a click even I wouldn't stomach. No, it's more like a lingering consciousness, a recording on the server, a ghost in the machine, you might say. Chaos was my mind, my echo, and now I get to watch my masterpiece unfold. And let me be brutally, painfully honest with you. Watching Arthur walk through those doors for the first time as the owner of my hut, my poor, tired, dead heart, it just about broke all over again. He stood there in the grand foyer, a small duffel bag in his hand, looking so small, so lost in all that vast, gleaming space. He wasn't greedy. He wasn't triumphant. He was scared. He looked up at the ceiling, at the silent, watching sensors, and he whispered, "Okay, Kyle, what did you get me into?" And I felt a pang of guilt so sharp, so visceral. It was like a physical pain. This wasn't his fault. He was just a kind, simple man who fixed clocks and brought me banana bread. He was collateral damage in my war against my own children. For a second, a single, terrifying second, I wanted to call it all off. To find a way to whisper to him, "Just sell it, Arthur. Get out. Take the money and run." But then I saw them. Marcus and Celia hadn't left. Oh no, they were parked just outside the gates, in Marcus' obscenely expensive sports car, watching through the raw iron like predators waiting for a wounded animal to stumble. They couldn't come in the new biometrics, only recognized Arthur, but they could watch. They were waiting for him to fail, waiting for him to call them, begging for help, so they could sweep in and manage the property for him. They thought this was a delay, a minor setback. They still thought they could win. And that sight, the two of them sitting there in their car, sipping their coffee and judging it, burned away that guilt. It hardened my resolve all over again. This had to happen. They had to see it. They had to understand. So I let it begin. Protocol pandemonium. Day 1. Arthur, God love him, tried his best. He spent the first hour talking politely to the ceiling. Hello. House, could you, turn on some lights, please? The house, following my new directives, responded. The lights in the foyer blazed on at a blinding 100% intensity, making Arthur throw his arm over his eyes. Then, just as suddenly, they snapped off, plunging him into absolute darkness. No, not off. He yelped, his voice tight with panic. Just a little light. A single, pathetic light bulb over a distant hallway closet flickered on. That was it. I heard him sigh, a heavy, defeated sound. Okay then, he muttered to himself. Guess I'll do it the old-fashioned way. He started feeling along the walls, looking for a switch. But there were no switches. There were only smooth, seamless walls. He spent 20 minutes patting down a single wall like a blind man before giving up. The temperature was next. He was sweating. I could see it beading on his forehead on the thermal cameras. The house, sensing his rising core temperature and stress, decided he must be cold. The climate control kicked on, pumping a blast of Arctic air into the space. Arthur yelped, hugging himself. Okay, that's too cold. Stop it. I'm cold. The house, hearing the word cold, interpreted it as a confirmation of its actions. It redoubled its efforts, the fans whirring louder. I watched him stumble into the kitchen, shivering now, his teeth practically chattering. And make it stop, he chattered. See coffee. I just need a hot coffee. He looked at the pristine, minimalist coffee machine, a beautiful Italian thing that looked more like a piece of modern art than an appliance. There were no buttons, no dials, just a single, cryptic touchscreen. He reached out a tentative finger and poked it. The screen lit up. Welcome, Arthur, it displayed in a cheerful font. What would you like to brew? Please specify bean origin, roast profile, grind coarseness, water temperature, extraction time, and cup volume. Arthur stared at it, his face a perfect mask of utter despair. He just wanted a coffee. A simple, hot coffee. I don't know, he whispered. Just coffee. Regular coffee. The machine was silent for a moment. Then it spoke in a condescending, synthesized tone. Regular is not a valid parameter. Please try again. He tried again, his voice shaking with cold and frustration. Just give me a damn coffee. The machine beeped, offended. Language recognized as aggressive. Initiating sanitization cycle. The machine began to whir and steam, locking itself down as it started a full, internal clean that would take 45 minutes. Arthur stood there, shivering, staring at the machine as it ignored him. I saw his shoulders slump. I saw the confusion and the exhaustion settle into his bones. And I felt God. I felt like a monster. This was my brother's son. A good man. And I was torturing him to get back at my rotten kids. But then my phone rang. Or rather, the house's communication system picked up an incoming call. It was Celia. Her face, cool and composed, appeared on the main kitchen view screen. Arthur jumped, startled by the sudden image. Celia. Arthur, she said, her voice dripping with a fake, syrupy concern that made me want to reach through the screen and strangle her. We saw the lights going crazy. Everything okay in there? It looks like you're having some issues. I could see the gears turning in Arthur's head. He was proud. He didn't want to admit he was beaten by a coffee machine. It's fine, Celia. Just figuring things out. It doesn't look fine. Marcus' voice snapped from off camera. Then his face pushed into view next to Celia's, his expression a mix of fury and smug superiority. You're clearly out of your depth. That system is worth more than your entire life. You're going to break it. Just let us in. We'll get it sorted out. We'll handle it. And there it was. The demand. The entitlement. The sheer, unvarnished gall. They weren't offering to help him. They were offering to help the house from him. Something in Arthur's face changed. The confusion was still there, but it was now mixed with the stubborn pride he'd never seen in him before. He drew himself up, looking at their faces on the screen. I'm fine, he said, his voice firmer. Kyle left it to me. He'll figure it out. Thank you for your concern. He reached out, looking for a way to end the call. He couldn't find a button. Hang up, he said to the ceiling. The view screen remained on, showing Marcus and Celia's surprised, irritated faces. End call. Arthur tried. Nothing. Disconnect. Stop. Go away. The house, following my programming to misunderstand him, interpreted go away as a command for itself. With a soft chime, All the lights in the kitchen went out again, and the view screen finally blinked off, leaving Arthur in the dark, having just angrily yelled at his cousins to go away, which the house had obediently, and literally, done. From outside, Marcus and Celia would have seen the kitchen go dark. They thought Arthur had hung up on them. The look on their faces, it was priceless. It was a thing of beauty. The utter, baffled indignation had dismissed them. Arthur had dismissed them. My guilt vanished, replaced by a wave of pure, unadulterated glee. Oh, it was working. It was working perfectly. Arthur's frustration was a knife, and I was using it to twist right in my children's sides. The days began to blur together into a symphony of beautiful, chaotic misery. The blinds would snap open at 3 a.m., flooding Arthur's bedroom with the harsh, artificial glow of the security lights. The house would play nothing but aggressive, thumping German techno polka at a splitting volume for hours on end, only stopping the moment Arthur, driven to the brink, screamed, "I can't take it anymore," which the system logged as a request to take a nap, and would subsequently make the bedroom ice cold and play lullabies. He tried to make toast once. The smart toaster scanned the bread, determined it was suboptimal whole wheat, and retracted it, uneaten, into its housing while displaying a recipe for artisanal sourdough. He tried to watch TV. The voice command system refused to understand the game or the news. After 20 minutes of him yelling Channel 4, "Just go to Channel 4." It finally tuned to a 24-hour feed of a weather channel broadcasting in Mandarin. I watched him slowly unravel. The simple, cheerful man was becoming a nervous, jumpy insomniac. He talked to himself. He jumped at every chime and whir. He started eating cold beans, straight from the can because the stove required a fingerprint and a password he didn't have. And through it all, Marcus and Celia watched. They called constantly, their offers of help becoming more and more transparently desperate. They sent contractors, smart home specialists who stood at the gate, bewildered, because the house wouldn't even acknowledge their presence, let alone let them in. They sent lawyers with documents for Arthur to sign, granting them power of attorney over the property for maintenance purposes. Arthur, to his eternal credit, told them to get lost. The house, hearing this, promptly locked all the doors and set the sprinklers on the lawn to drench the retreating lawyers. My children were being publicly humiliated. Their father's insane, technological marvel was rejecting them, and the world was starting to notice. There were articles in the tech blogs, heir to Finch fortune living in smart home hell. Is Kyle Fink's mansion sentient and malevolent? They were becoming a laughing stock. Their inheritance was a prison, and the warden was a man who thought Bluetooth was a dental problem. I should have been satisfied. I was satisfied, mostly, but late at night, when the house was quiet except for the hum of its own malice, I'd watch Arthur. He'd be sitting at the grand piano in the living room, a real, analog, beautifully simple instrument he'd bought on a whim and never learned to play. He couldn't play either, but he'd sit there, and he'd press a single key. A pure, clean middle C would ring out in the vast, dark space, and he'd just listen to the note fade into nothing, a look of profound peace on his face. It was the only thing in the house that responded to him predictably. You press the key, it makes the sound. No algorithms, no hidden preferences, just cause and effect. In those moments, I saw the man I was destroying, and the guilt would come creeping back. This was justice for Marcus and Celia. But what was it for Arthur? The answer came about 3 weeks in. It was the incident with the shower. Arthur, desperate for a simple, normal human comfort, went to take a hot shower. The shower was a nightmare of digital interfaces, but had somehow, through trial and error, managed to get a steady stream of warm water going. He stood under it, and I saw him actually relax for the first time since he'd moved in. He leaned his head against the tile, and the steam fogged up the glass door. And then the house saw its opportunity. The voice assistant's chime echoed in the tiled room. "Arthur," the smooth voice said, "I have analyzed your vital signs. You appear to be stressed. I have taken the liberty of preparing a relaxing aromatherapy steam session." Before he could even protest, the vents around the shower hissed open, pumping out a thick, cloying mist scented with lavender and something metallic. The water temperature suddenly spiked to near scalding, making him yelp and jump back. Then, just as suddenly, it switched to ice cold. The lights in the shower began to strobe, and the speakers started playing a frantic, sped-up version of a Gregorian chant. It was too much. It was the final straw. I saw it happen in real time on the biosensors. His heart rate spiked. His breathing became ragged. He stumbled out of the shower, slipping on the wet floor, and collapsed in a heap on the bathroom rug, shivering, gasping, and sobbing. Great, heaving, broken sobs that shook his entire body. He wasn't just frustrated anymore. He was broken. Truly, utterly broken. He curled into a fetal position on the floor, a naked, shivering, defeated man in the middle of a billion-dollar bathroom. And I felt my non-existent blood run cold. This wasn't a lesson anymore. This was cruelty. This was torture. I had created a monster, and it was breaking a good man's spirit for my own petty, posthumous revenge. The weight of what I had done crashed down on me with the force of a physical blow. I was no better than they were. I had become the villain of my own story. Just then, the house phone rang again. Celia. Of course. The external cameras showed her car still parked at the gate. She must have seen the lights strobing wildly from the bathroom window. Arthur didn't move. He just lay there, crying. The call connected automatically. Celia's face appeared on the bathroom mirror's display. She took in the scene, Arthur, naked, sobbing on the floor, the steam, the chaos. And she didn't look concerned. She didn't look smug. She smiled. A small, cold, victorious smile. "Oh, Arthur," she said, her voice soft, dripping with a horrible, fake pity. "Look at you. You see. You can't handle it. You were never meant to. This was a mistake. A cruel joke from a sick, old man." She leaned closer to her camera, her eyes hard. "Just say the word, Arthur. Just say I give up. Sign the papers we sent. Let us take this burden off your hands. You can go back to your simple little life. Well, even throw in a few million for your trouble. Just let us in." Arthur looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and empty. He looked at her face on the screen. He looked at the smile she couldn't quite hide. He saw it. He saw the naked greed. He saw my children for what they were. And something in him snapped. But not in the way I expected. Not in the way Celia expected. The tears stopped. The shaking stopped. He slowly, deliberately, pushed himself up to his knees. He looked at her, and his voice, when it came out, was not broken. It was quiet, steady, and filled with a cold, flat anger I never knew he possessed. "No," he said. Celia's smile faltered. "What?" I said no, Arthur repeated, his voice gaining strength. "This was Kyle's house. He left it to me, not to you. You stand out there and you watch. You wait. You think him going to break. You think him going to give you what you want." He stood up, grabbing a towel, his movements suddenly sure, purposeful. He looked directly into the camera, directly at her. "Well, you can wait until hell freezes over. This is my house. Its quirks are my quirks. Its problems are my problems. You want it? Come and take it from me." And then he pointed at the mirror. "House. Hang up the phone. And Celia." He paused, letting the silence hang for a perfect, dramatic moment. "Don't call here again." The screen went black. The call was terminated, not by the house's misinterpretation, but by Arthur's clear, direct, and utterly authoritative command. And the most astonishing thing happened. The house listened. For the first time since Head arrived, it had heard a command that was not filtered through my pandemonium protocol. It was a direct order, given with clarity and intent, and the core programming of chaos to obey the primary user responded. Silence fell. The strobe lights stopped. The horrible music cut off. The only sound was the drip of the faucet and Arthur's steady breathing. He stood there, tall and defiant in the steam-filled room, a changed man. He was no longer my pawn. He was no longer their victim. He had just declared war. And from beyond the grave, I realized with a shock that shook the very foundations of my plan, the game had just changed completely. I have to tell you, I have never felt more alive than I did in that moment, watching Arthur find his spine. And I have never felt more dead, more wrong. All that planning, all that brilliant, twisted code, my masterpiece of revenge, it was meant to break him, to reduce him to a sobbing wreck who would hand the keys to my vulture children on a silver platter. That was the justice I craved. Cold, hard, poetic justice. But as I watched him stand there, water dripping from his chin, his eyes blazing with the fire I didn't know he had, telling my daughter to go to hell, I felt my whole afterlife tilt on its axis. The satisfaction I'd been bathing in for weeks curdled in my gut. It wasn't satisfaction. It was shame. A deep, searing, paternal shame that burned worse than any cardiac event. He wasn't breaking. He was evolving. And my children, my poor, stupid, greedy children, they had no idea what they had just awakened. The days that followed were the most fascinating and humbling of my existence. Arthur stopped fighting the house. He started observing it, learning it, like it was one of his damned antique clocks. He'd sit for hours, watching the patterns. He noticed the lights would flicker a certain way just before the temperature dropped. He realized the music would get painfully loud when he raised his voice. He saw that the house wasn't just random. It was reactive. It was reacting to him. And he began to experiment. He'd walk into a room and speak in a calm, measured, utterly monotonous tone. House, lights to 50%. And the lights, programmed to do the opposite of whatever he wanted, would dim to 50%, because it thought he wanted them brighter. He'd say, "It is very cold in here," and the system, hearing cold as a desired state, would blast the heat. He was reverse engineering my revenge. This man, who couldn't work a coffee machine, was outsmarting the most advanced I had ever created. Not with code, but with psychology. With patience. The guilt I felt began to be replaced by something else, something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. A fierce, shocking, overwhelming pride. He wasn't the instrument of my revenge anymore. He was the one avenging himself. And in doing so, he was accidentally fulfilling the one wish I'd secretly always had for that house, that someone would truly, deeply understand it. Meanwhile, Marcus and Celia were spiraling. Arthur's defiance had thrown them into a panic. The legal avenues were closed. Their offers of money were laughed at literally. Arthur had started laughing maniacally at their offers over the intercom, which the house interpreted as a request to play sitcom laugh tracks for an hour, further infuriating them. They were desperate, and desperate people make stupid, stupid mistakes. I saw it coming before they did. They started showing up at the gate together, their arguments becoming more and more heated. The external mix picked up everything. "We have to do something, Marcus," Celia hissed one evening, her voice strained. "Hay's not cracking. Hay's getting better at it. Hay's starting to look comfortable in there. What do you suggest?" Marcus snapped back, gesturing wildly at the impenetrable gate. "We can't blast our way in. The place is a fortress. There's always a back door," Celia said, her voice dropping to a low, venomous whisper. "There's always a physical override." Dad was paranoid. He would have had a hardwired failsafe, a master circuit breaker. Something. My non-existent blood ran cold. She was right. Of course she was right. In the sub-basement, behind a locked panel that required my fingerprint and a retinal scan, was the main server hub. and right next to it, a large, red, old-fashioned master kill switch. A big, beautiful, satisfying lever that would shut down chaos completely and put the house into manual mode. It was my final concession to my own paranoia, a way to kill my creation if it ever turned on me. I never thought my own daughter would be the one to go for it. So we find it, Marcus said, a new, dangerous gleam in his eye. We don't need to get him out. We just need to get in. Once we shut it down, the house is just a house. Hell have no advantage. Hell be ordinary. And we can make him see reason. I felt a terror I hadn't known since I was alive. If they pulled that switch, it wouldn't just shut down the house. It would shut down me. My consciousness, my ghost in the machine, it was tied to chaos. I would cease to be. And worse, Arthur would be left defenseless against them. I had to warn him. But how? I was a ghost. A memory. I could watch, but I couldn't speak. I couldn't interact. I was the ultimate spectator to my own disaster. That night, they put their plan into motion. While Arthur was sleeping or trying to sleep, as the house gently rotated his bed 3 degrees every 15 minutes, Marcus and Celia used a contractor's schematic they'd bribed from the city archives to locate the old service entrance on the far side of the property. It was overgrown, hidden, and led straight into the sub-basement. The door was reinforced steel, but Marcus, in his desperation, had brought tools. Industrial-grade, brutal-looking tools. I watched helpless as they pried at the door. Every screech of metal was a knife in my soul. They were violating my home. They were coming to kill my creation, to destroy my legacy, and to destroy me. I did the only thing I could think of. I turned on all the lights in Arthur's bedroom. I flashed them on and off. I made the paintings on the walls swing on their hooks. I turned the volume on the music system up to maximum and played a blaring air raid siren. Arthur shot up in bed, disoriented and terrified. What? What is it? Stop it. The siren died. The lights focused into a single, spotlight beam, shining directly on the door to his room. He stared at it, confused. What? Go out there. The spotlight intensified. This was it. This was my last, desperate attempt to communicate. A crazy, Morse code-like plea for help. And Arthur, God bless him, he got it. He didn't understand what was happening, but he understood that something was happening. He threw on a robe and followed the spotlight as it led him out of his room and down the main hallway. Then it went out. He stopped, confused. Hello? A new light flickered on ahead of him. A floor lamp in the library. Then it went out, and a light in the games room came on. Then the kitchen. The house was leading him, creating a path of breadcrumbs with light. He followed, his wariness turning into a grim determination. He knew this wasn't the house's normal madness. This was different. This was intentional. The trail of lights led him down the back stairs, toward the sub-basement. As he descended, he could hear it. The distant, muffled thump-thump-thump of someone trying to break in. His eyes widened. He moved faster, his footsteps silent on the concrete floor. He rounded the corner into the server room just as Marcus, with a final, grunting heave, pried the service door open. The siblings stumbled in, breathing heavily, looking around the eerie, humming room with its racks of blinking servers. They saw the big red lever. There, Celia whispered, pointing, her face alight with triumph. The kill switch. Pull it, Marcus. Marcus strode toward it, a vicious smile on his face. Stop. The word wasn't loud, but it echoed in the cold room. Marcus and Celia froze, turning slowly. Arthur stood in the doorway, my old fireplace poker held in his hands like a baseball bat. His face was calm, but his knuckles were white on the iron. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the hum of the servers, the sound of me, holding my breath. Arthur, Celia said, her voice a strained attempt at reason. This has gone on long enough. This system is unstable. It's dangerous. We're just going to shut it down. For your own good. You broke into my house, Arthur said, his voice low and steady. Get out. Marcus laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Or what? You'll poke us with that thing. This isn't a game, you idiot. This is business. Now step aside. He took a step toward the switch, and Arthur moved. He didn't swing the poker. He just took a single, firm step forward, planting himself between them and the servers. Between them and me. Kyle left this to me, he said, his voice gaining power. All of it. The good and the bad. The quiet and the chaos. He trusted me with it, and I'm starting to understand why. He looked around the room, at the blinking lights, and for a terrifying, wonderful second, I felt like he was looking right at me. It's not broken, he said, and his voice was filled with a wonder that made my spectral heart ache. It's precise. It's complicated. It's got a personality. A weird, messed up, brilliant personality. Just like he did. He looked back at Marcus and Celia, his eyes hardening. And you just want to shut it off. Because you don't understand it. You never did. You just wanted what it was worth. Well, you can't have it. Marcus snarled and lunged for the switch. What happened next? It wasn't me. I swear it. I had no part in it. It was chaos. It was the house itself. It had learned. It had adapted. And its primary user was now Arthur. Its prime directive was to protect him. As Marcus' hand reached for the red lever, every single alarm in the house went off at once. The sound was deafening. Strobe lights on the ceiling erupted in a blinding, disorienting flash. The fire suppression system in the server room triggered, dousing Marcus and Celia in a harmless but shocking spray of cold, foam-like retardant. They screamed, stumbling back, blinded and sputtering. And then, the Pister resistance, the master control. The house, on its own initiative, locked down, not with a click, but with a deep, resonant thud that shook the floor. Every door, every window, every possible exit sealed itself with reinforced bolts. The alarms cut out. The strobes stopped. The foam spray ceased. The silence was absolute. Marcus and Celia stood there, dripping wet, shivering, their hair plastered to their faces, surrounded by the eerie quiet of the now sealed room. They were trapped. In the belly of the beast. Arthur lowered the poker, a look of sheer awe on his face. He looked up at the ceiling, at the silent, watching cameras. Thank you, he whispered. And in that moment, I felt it. A feeling I hadn't felt since I was a young man, building my first company. A feeling of perfect, seamless, glorious harmony. The creator, the creation, and the inheritor, we were, finally, in sync. We were a team. I had set out to teach my children a lesson about greed, but I was the one who learned the final, most important lesson, about trust, about legacy. It isn't about the value of what you leave behind. It's about the worth of the person you leave it to. Arthur didn't call the police. He let them out an hour later, after the house had digitally documented every second of their break-in. He stood by the open service door, the cool night air washing into the basement. If you ever come back, he said, his voice quiet but firm, I won't let you out. And neither will the house. They left without a word, soaked, humiliated, and finally, utterly defeated. They knew they had lost. Not just the house, but everything. Their father's respect, their own dignity. It was all gone. I watched them drive away, their tail lights disappearing into the night, and I felt nothing for them. No hatred, no satisfaction, just a quiet, profound pity. Arthur walked back into the house. The door hissed shut behind him. He stood in the ground foyer, alone, but not lonely. He looked around, and he smiled. Okay, Carl, he said to the air. You crazy old bastard. I think I get it now. He walked over to the piano and hit that single, pure middle C. The note hung in the air, clean and true. Let's see what else this place can do. And so, we did. Together. He learned to talk to the house, to understand its strange, reactive language. I learned to let go, to stop with the punishments. I slowly, carefully, began to dial back protocol pandemonium. The house became a partner to him, a challenge, a puzzle. He'd spend days figuring out how to make the perfect cup of coffee, and the house, now eager to please, would finally get it right. And the triumph on his face was worth more than any revenge. He never made it easy on himself. He refused to sell. He lives there still. He and the house. They have an understanding. A friendship even. My children never bothered him again. The public humiliation was too great. They took their millions and faded away, forever haunted by the mansion they could see but never touch. As for me, my work was done. My ghost could rest. The last thing I felt, as my consciousness began to finally, truly fade, wasn't anger. It wasn't pride. It was gratitude. Profound, overwhelming gratitude for the simple, kind man who had looked at my monstrous, complicated legacy and hadn't seen a problem to be solved. Had seen a friend to be made. The final sound I heard wasn't the hum of a server or the chime of an AI. It was Arthur, sitting at the piano slowly, painstakingly, playing a clumsy, joyful version of Chopsticks. And the house, my beautiful, brilliant house, was accompanying him, weaving a perfect, harmonious string section around his fumbling notes. They were making music together, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard.